The dust-laden wind slapped against Alexandra's face as she squinted at her phone screen. Her heart stopped. The words stared back at her, unrelenting in their cruelty, illuminated harshly by the Middle Eastern sun. Found someone who entertains me more than you do. Divorce papers forwarded to your email. Just sign digitally. Goodbye. 10 years of marriage reduced to a text message while she served her country 3,000 miles from home. Alexandra Hudson hadn't cried in front of her unit before, and today wouldn't be the first. With trembling fingers hidden from view, she slipped the phone into her pocket and returned to the military convoy's preparation. Her expression remained unchanged, but internally, a hurricane raged. In 12 hours, she would lead a critical supply mission into a hostile zone. There was no time for personal crises. Staff Sergeant Hudson, satellite intel shows a storm front approaching. Decision on whether to delay is yours. Captain Vicente's voice cut through her thoughts. Alexandra studied the weather charts on the tablet he held. The mission proceeds as scheduled, sir. We'll beat the storm by 4 hours if we maintain pace. Only the slightest narrowing of the captain's eyes revealed he'd noticed something amiss. After 10 years in the military following her career as an accountant, Alexandra had perfected the art of compartmentalization. But the captain had known her for 7 of those years. "Everything all right, Hudson?" he asked quietly, falling into step beside her as they walked through the dusty base. "Perfectly fine, sir," she replied automatically, her blue eyes fixed straight ahead. She'd tell him later, perhaps, but not now. Not when 46 lives and critical medical supplies depended on her focus. That night, alone in her quarters, Alexandra allowed herself 15 minutes of silent tears before the analytical part of her brain took over. Robert's message had been shocking, but not entirely surprising. The signs had been accumulating for months before her deployment. Hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when she entered the room, unexplained late nights at work, and a sudden interest in his appearance that hadn't existed during the previous 9 years of their marriage. Alexandra pulled out her laptop and navigated to her email. The divorce papers waited there, as promised, but instead of immediately opening them, she logged into their joint bank account. Empty. Every penny of the $83,000 they'd saved together, gone. The withdrawal had been made 3 days ago. Her jaw tightened. 4 months before her deployment, sensing trouble, Alexandra had begun taking precautions. As a former accountant who had worked in the field for 4 years before joining the military at 28, she understood financial self-preservation. She had opened a separate account at a different bank and had been quietly diverting 30% of her salary there. This account Robert knew nothing about, or so she thought. Alexandra's blood ran cold as she logged into her secret account. 0 balance. The funds, nearly $45,000, had been withdrawn yesterday. "Impossible," she whispered to the empty room. No one knew about this account. She had used her mother's maiden name, a different email address, and had all communications sent to a P.O. box, rather than their home address. The only explanation was that someone had been monitoring her communications, perhaps for months. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was calculated theft. And if Robert knew about her secret account, what else did he know? Alexandra pulled out a secure satellite phone, one used only for emergencies. Her fingers hovered over the keypad for just a moment before she dialed. It was time to call in a favor from an old Army buddy who now worked in cyber intelligence. "Jake, it's Alexandra Hudson. I need your help with something off the books." She explained the situation quickly, her voice level despite the turmoil inside. "Jesus, Alex. That's more than just a nasty divorce. Give me 24 hours to dig around," Jake promised. After ending the call, Alexandra returned to the divorce papers. As she scrolled through them, her accountant's eye caught discrepancies immediately. According to these documents, she was relinquishing all claims to their house, a property they had purchased together 7 years ago. But there was something strange about the mortgage details listed. Alexandra pulled up their mortgage statement from last month's records she kept backed up on a secure cloud server. The numbers didn't match. According to the divorce papers, they had refinanced their home 6 months ago and taken out an additional $120,000 in equity. She had never signed refinancing documents. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Robert had forged her signature. While she had been preparing for deployment, her husband had been systematically stripping away their assets and setting her up for financial ruin. Alexandra leaned back in her chair, breathing deeply. The path forward crystallized in her mind with military precision. She would not sign these fraudulent papers. She would not reveal what she knew. Not yet. Instead, she sent a single-word reply to Robert's text message. Okay. Then she composed a brief email. Need time to review documents. Currently on critical mission. Will sign when I return in 3 weeks. Alexandra closed her laptop and began packing her gear for tomorrow's mission. In the military, she had learned to fight smart, not just hard. Robert thought he was dealing with a heartbroken, distracted soldier 3,000 miles away. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, as the convoy prepared to depart, Captain Vicente approached her. "Hudson, got a minute?" She followed him to a quiet corner of the compound. "Sir, just received word your request for extended deployment has been denied," he said, studying her face carefully. "Headquarters wants you back stateside in 3 weeks as originally planned. Something you want to tell me about why you suddenly want to extend your tour by 6 months?" Alexandra hesitated. Captain Vicente had always been fair with her. "Personal matters, sir. Nothing that will affect my performance." "Hudson, in 15 years of service, I've seen what happens when people try to run from personal problems by burying themselves in deployment. Whatever's waiting for you back home, face it head on. That's an order." "Yes, sir," she replied, appreciating his concern, but knowing he couldn't possibly understand the complexity of what she was facing. As the convoy rolled out under the harsh desert sun, Alexandra's mind was already working on her strategy. She had 3 weeks to gather evidence, secure legal counsel, and prepare for war, not against enemy forces, but against the man who had sworn to love and honor her until death. What Robert didn't know was that Alexandra had already contacted their home security company from abroad and remotely activated all recording devices in their house, devices Robert had forgotten existed. Every conversation, every moment in their home was now being captured and stored on a server only she could access. The evidence was already accumulating, and soon Alexandra would discover just how deep the betrayal went. And when she did, Robert Hudson would learn a painful lesson about underestimating a woman trained by the United States military to overcome insurmountable odds. The convoy passed through the guarded perimeter of the base, and Alexandra shifted her focus entirely to the mission at hand. For now, the deserts of the Middle East demanded her complete attention. The battlefield waiting for her at home would have to wait just a little longer. 2 days after the supply mission, Alexandra sat cross-legged on her bunk, surrounded by printouts from Jake's overnight intelligence report. The picture emerging was far worse than a simple marital betrayal. Robert hadn't just been cheating. He appeared to be part of something more systematic and sinister. "Staff Sergeant Hudson?" a voice called from outside her quarters. "Enter," Alexandra replied, swiftly gathering the papers into a folder. Private Mendez stepped inside, saluting. "Ma'am, Captain Vicente requests your presence at command, ASAP." Alexandra nodded, tucking the folder into her footlocker. "Thank you, Private." Dismissed. 15 minutes later, she stood before Captain Vicente in the command center, her posture perfect despite having slept only 3 hours. "Hudson, got some troubling intel I need to share with you," Captain Vicente said, his normally stoic face showing signs of concern. "Take a seat." Alexandra remained standing. "I prefer to stand, sir." He nodded, respecting her choice. "I've received communication from JAG Corps stateside. Someone has been attempting to access your military benefits and pension information using your credentials. They've been flagged and blocked, but I thought you should know immediately." A chill ran through Alexandra's body, though her expression remained unchanged. "Thank you for informing me, sir. Is there something going on that I should be aware of, Staff Sergeant?" The captain's tone was careful, balancing between professional concern and personal support. Alexandra calculated her response. She needed allies, and Captain Vicente was someone she had trusted with her life in combat situations. "Sir, I recently received divorce papers from my husband. It appears he may be involved in financial impropriety that extends beyond our marital assets." Captain Vicente's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. And you believe he's attempting to access your military benefits?" "The timing suggests it, sir." He studied her for a moment. "Hudson, I'm going to arrange for you to speak with Military Legal Services via secure channel tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I'm granting you 24 hours of personal time. Consider it an order." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones we fight with weapons." "Thank you, sir," Alexandra replied, surprised by the captain's unusual display of empathy. Back in her quarters, Alexandra reviewed everything Jake had sent her. Her husband's new girlfriend, Vanessa Schultz, had an interesting history. She had been involved with 3 different servicemen over the past 5 years, all of whom had gone through divorces while deployed. In each case, significant assets had been liquidated or transferred before the divorces were finalized. Alexandra's hands trembled slightly as she connected the dots. This wasn't random. This was a pattern, a scheme targeting military personnel deployed overseas. Her secure satellite phone buzzed. Jake was calling back. "Alex, you there?" His voice was tense. "I'm here. What did you find?" "It's bigger than we thought. Your husband's girlfriend has connections to a lawyer named Richard Blackwell. He's handled 7 military divorces in the past 3 years, all with similar patterns. The service member is deployed. Spouse empties accounts. Properties are quickly sold or refinanced, and by the time the soldier returns stateside, the assets are long gone." Alexandra's jaw tightened. "And Blackwell's the attorney listed on my divorce papers." "Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. In each case, the properties were sold well below market value to shell companies that later flipped them for massive profits. The shell companies all trace back to offshore accounts controlled by, let me guess, Blackwell." Alexandra finished. "You got it. The scam seems to be identify military personnel in stable marriages with significant assets, particularly home equity. Send in someone like Vanessa to seduce the spouse, convince them they're in love, then manipulate them into liquidating assets before the deployed spouse returns. The spouse gets a cut, Vanessa gets a cut, and Blackwell orchestrates the whole thing, taking the lion's share through the property schemes." Alexandra closed her eyes, processing this information. "How did they find out about my secret account, Jake?" There was a pause on the line. "That's the part that concerns me most. I found evidence of spyware on your home computer. It's sophisticated stuff, the kind usually used by private investigators or corporate espionage. My guess is they've been monitoring your communications for months, possibly since before Vanessa entered the picture." The pieces fell into place. Alexandra remembered Robert insisting on upgrading their home computer system 6 months ago, claiming he needed better processing power for a new gaming hobby. She had thought nothing of it at the time. "Jake, I need you to do something else for me. Can you remotely access the security system in my house? I activated the cameras, but I need to know if they've been compromised. Give me the login details. I'll secure the feed and make sure it's only accessible to you." After providing the information, Alexandra ended the call and stared at the wall of her quarters, her mind racing through possibilities and strategies. The next morning, after a secure video conference with a JAG Corps attorney, Alexandra had a clearer picture of her legal options. The military lawyer had been alarmed by the pattern of fraud and potential targeting of service members. "Staff Sergeant Hudson, what you're describing goes beyond divorce proceedings. "This appears to be organized fraud targeting military personnel," the attorney had said. "I'm going to contact the FBI about this case immediately." Alexandra had expected this response, but she knew federal investigations moved slowly. By the time they gathered evidence and built a case, Robert and his accomplices could have disappeared with her money and home. That afternoon, Alexandra received an email from Robert. "Alex, I need you to sign those papers ASAP. We have a buyer interested in the house, and I need your signature to proceed with the sale. It's a time-sensitive offer." So that was their play. They needed her signature to sell the house quickly, probably to one of Blackwell's shell companies at a substantial discount. Alexandra composed her reply carefully. "Robert, I'm currently in a remote area with limited connectivity. I'll be able to review and sign the papers next week when I return to the main base. Please tell the buyers we appreciate their patience." She was buying time, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. If Robert and his accomplices were getting desperate, they might resort to more drastic measures, like forging her signature on the sale documents, as they had done with the refinancing. Alexandra needed to act quickly. She typed out a detailed email to Jake, with specific instructions on monitoring all activities related to her home and financial accounts. Then she made a decision that went against her military training of facing challenges head-on. She would let Robert believe she remained in the dark. That evening, as Alexandra prepared for night patrol duty, Captain Vicente approached her. "Hudson, I've received word from headquarters. Your return stateside has been expedited. You'll be on a transport plane tomorrow night." Alexandra's surprise was genuine. "Sir, may I ask why?" "The JAG Corps has elevated your situation. Apparently, they believe you're not the only service member being targeted by this scheme. They want you stateside to help build their case." She nodded, processing this development. "Understood, sir." "One more thing, Hudson," Captain Vicente said, his voice lowering. "This information is classified. As far as anyone knows, including any communications you might have with your husband, you're still scheduled to return in 3 weeks." Alexandra understood immediately. They were setting a trap. "Yes, sir. Absolutely clear." As she headed out for patrol, Alexandra's mind shifted into tactical planning mode. The stakes had just risen dramatically. This wasn't just about her marriage or her finances anymore. It was about protecting other service members from being victimized by the same scheme. That night, as Alexandra led her unit through the dark perimeter of the base, her satellite phone vibrated in her pocket. Stepping away from her team for a moment, she checked the message from Jake. "Security system shows unknown woman and man in your house, accessing your home office, capturing everything. Also, something big. Property records show your house is scheduled for a closed sale in 5 days. They've already filed the paperwork with your signature. FBI has been notified." "Seat." Alexandra slipped the phone back into her pocket, her expression revealing nothing of the rage and determination building inside her. In 24 hours, she would be on a plane heading home, and Robert Hudson was about to learn what happened when you betrayed a woman who had been trained to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast her enemies in the most hostile environments on Earth. As the desert wind whipped sand against her face, Alexandra found herself smiling for the first time in days. She had survived ambushes, navigated minefields, and led her team through enemy territory undetected. Compared to that, taking down a fraud ring operated by her cheating husband and his girlfriend seemed almost straightforward. Her team looked at her questioningly. "Everything okay, Staff Sergeant?" "Never better," Alexandra replied, her voice steady and sure. "Let's complete this patrol and get back to base. I've got a long journey ahead." Alexandra's heart pounded as the military transport plane touched down on American soil. For most returning soldiers, this moment brought relief and joy. For her, it marked the beginning of a covert operation. She was officially still deployed for another 17 days, according to all records available to Robert and his accomplices. After debriefing with 2 FBI agents at a secure location near the airbase, Alexandra checked into a motel 30 miles from her home under a false name provided by the FBI. Special Agent Lisa Connor, a sharp-featured woman with calculating eyes, laid out the situation. Staff Sergeant Hudson, we've been building a case against Richard Blackwell for 18 months, but haven't been able to catch him in the act with sufficient evidence for prosecution. Your situation has provided us with the perfect opportunity. Alexandra studied the case files spread across the motel bed. How many military families have been targeted? We've identified 17 potential victims over the past 4 years. 6 cases match the exact pattern you're experiencing. Agent Connor pointed to photographs of different homes. In each case, the properties were sold to shell companies at 15 to 20% below market value, then flipped within months for substantial profits. And my house is scheduled to be sold in... Alexandra checked her watch. Less than 48 hours. The second FBI agent, a broad-shouldered man named Torres, nodded. Exactly. The sale is scheduled for 10 o'clock Thursday morning. We need your help to catch them all together. Your husband, Vanessa Schultz, Blackwell, and ideally the buyer representing the shell company. Alexandra leaned back against the headboard, thinking, Robert believes I'm still overseas. He doesn't know that I know about the refinancing fraud or the planned sale. What's your proposed approach? Agent Connor outlined the FBI's plan. They would monitor the situation until the morning of the sale, then raid the house during the transaction, catching everyone in the act of fraud. Alexandra shook her head. That approach has too many variables. What if they complete the paperwork before you enter? What if someone doesn't show up? You need more than just catching them together. You need evidence of their intent and acknowledgement of the scheme. What do you suggest? Agent Torres asked, clearly interested in her perspective. Alexandra stood up and paced the small motel room. I need to go home tonight, not to confront them, but to place additional surveillance devices and secure evidence they don't know I have. That's extremely risky, Connor objected. If they discover you're back, they won't. Alexandra interrupted with quiet confidence. I've conducted night reconnaissance in active combat zones. I can enter my own home undetected. The agents exchanged glances. Even if you could, Torres said, what additional evidence do you hope to secure? According to my security system, Robert and Vanessa have been using my home office computer. I need to extract the hard drive. It likely contains communications about the scheme they believe are deleted, but can be recovered by your forensic team. Alexandra's mind was already mapping out entry points and timing. Additionally, I want to place voice-activated recording devices in locations where they're likely to discuss the sale. After 2 hours of debate and planning, the FBI agents reluctantly agreed to Alexandra's proposal, with conditions. She would wear a wire, maintain communication with their surveillance team, and extract herself immediately if there was any risk of discovery. At 2:15 in the morning, under a moonless sky, Alexandra approached her own home from the wooded area behind their property. She wore black tactical clothing provided by the FBI and carried a small pack of equipment. The irony wasn't lost on her. Using military skills to infiltrate the house she had helped pay for, the home where she had once felt safe and loved. Through her earpiece, Agent Connor's voice was tense. Security system shows both subjects asleep in the master bedroom. All exterior doors and windows appear secured. Alexandra allowed herself a small, bitter smile. She knew something the FBI didn't. The small workshop in the backyard, where she used to pursue her woodworking hobby, had a connecting passage to the basement that didn't appear on the house plans. Robert had always hated going into that dusty space and had likely forgotten it existed. "Copy that," she whispered, making her way to the workshop. The lock was simple to bypass, and moments later she was sliding through the narrow passage into the basement. Inside her own home, Alexandra moved like a ghost. The house felt different, alien. Vanessa had already redecorated parts of it, replacing Alexandra's carefully chosen items with gaudy, expensive pieces. In the living room, A half-empty bottle of $1,000 champagne sat next to 2 glasses. They were celebrating already. Alexandra focused on her mission. In the home office, she quickly and silently removed the computer's hard drive, replacing it with an identical one that looked untouched but would function normally. She placed miniature recording devices in strategic locations: the office, dining room, and kitchen, areas where discussions about the sale would likely occur. As she worked, she heard movement upstairs. Someone getting up, footsteps heading toward the bathroom. Alexandra froze, controlling her breathing. The footsteps eventually returned to the bedroom, and she continued her task. In Robert's bedside drawer, she found something unexpected: a burner phone, different from his regular cell. Alexandra quickly photographed the call history and text messages with a specialized device provided by the FBI. The texts revealed conversations between Robert and Blackwell discussing the operation and previous successes. As she prepared to exit, Alexandra paused at the threshold of what had once been her bedroom. Through the partially open door, she could see 2 figures in her bed. Robert's arm draped possessively over Vanessa. For a brief moment, emotion threatened to overwhelm her tactical focus. Not love or longing, but a deep sense of betrayal that someone she had trusted with her life could become so corrupt. Alexandra silently closed the door and made her way back through the house, carefully erasing any signs of her presence. Back in the surveillance van 2 blocks away, she handed over the evidence to the FBI agents. "This should give you everything you need," she said, her voice steady despite the emotional toll of the night's operation. Agent Connor reviewed the photos from the burner phone. "This is gold, Sergeant Hudson." Text messages discussing previous victims, planned division of profits. She looked up at Alexandra with newfound respect. "You've given us more in one night than we gathered in months of investigation." The next day was spent preparing for the final phase of the operation. Alexandra remained in the motel room, reviewing transcripts as the FBI monitored the recordings from her home. By evening, they had captured multiple damning conversations between Robert, Vanessa, and Blackwell, who had stopped by to finalize details for the morning sale. "We need to discuss what happens after tomorrow's closing," Blackwell had said, his voice crisp and businesslike on the recording. "Once the funds clear, Vanessa needs to disappear as usual. Robert, you'll receive your 20% after the property flips. Same arrangement as with the Johnson and Williams properties." Alexandra's stomach turned as she heard Robert's reply. "What about Alexandra's military pension? You said we could still access that." Blackwell's laugh was cold. "We're working on it. The military benefits are trickier, but we've managed before. By the time she returns from deployment, the divorce will be finalized using the power of attorney documentation you provided. She'll never know what hit her." "And if she fights it?" Robert asked, a rare note of concern in his voice. "Who's she going to fight? By next month, these shell companies won't exist, the money will be in offshore accounts, and you'll be living in Belize with a new identity if you choose. We've done this 6 times already with military spouses. They're the perfect targets. Deployed for months, trusting their partners to handle finances, and by the time they realize what's happened, the trail is cold." That evening, Alexandra met with the federal prosecutor assigned to the case, a stern woman named Judith Reeves. Together with the FBI agents, they finalized the plan for the next morning. "We'll have agents posing as the buyers," Reeves explained. "When all parties are present and the fraudulent sale is about to be executed, we move in. With the evidence you've provided and what we'll gather tomorrow, we can charge them with multiple federal crimes: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and potentially even offenses under the Service Members Civil Relief Act." Alexandra nodded, studying the operational map. "And Robert?" The prosecutor's expression was grim. "Your husband is looking at significant federal time, Staff Sergeant. He's not just a victim of manipulation, as he might claim. The evidence shows he was an active, willing participant in multiple fraud schemes." Later that night, alone in her motel room, Alexandra allowed herself to truly feel the magnitude of Robert's betrayal for the first time. 10 years of marriage, countless deployments where she had risked her life while he apparently plotted against her. She thought of the future they had planned together, the retirement dreams, the travel they would enjoy when she completed her military service. All of it had been a lie, at least on his part. Alexandra's satellite phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Alex, I've been monitoring their emails as requested. Blackwell just sent confirmation that the buyers will be at your house at 9:30 tomorrow, half an hour before the scheduled closing. He also instructed Robert to have your power of attorney documentation ready for final verification." "Thanks, Jake. That matches what we expected." There was a pause on the line. "Are you okay, Alex? Really okay?" Alexandra considered the question. "I will be," she finally answered, "once this is finished." After ending the call, Alexandra stood by the motel window, looking out at the night sky. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of the most personal battle of her life. Not fought with weapons on foreign soil, but with evidence and intelligence on home ground. She thought about the other military families who had been victimized, the soldiers who had returned from service to find their lives shattered, their assets stolen by people they trusted. Her fight wasn't just for herself anymore. Alexandra Hudson had always believed in justice. Tomorrow, she would help deliver it. She checked her watch. 9 hours until the operation began. Alexandra laid down on the bed, fully clothed, setting her mental alarm as she had done countless times in the field. She would allow herself exactly 5 hours of sleep, then rise to prepare for the mission ahead. As she drifted off, her last thought was not of Robert or the betrayal, but of the future that awaited after justice was served. For the first time since receiving that devastating text message in the desert, Alexandra felt something unexpected taking root in her heart. Hope. The morning of the operation dawned clear and cool. Alexandra sat in an unmarked FBI van 3 blocks from her house, surrounded by surveillance equipment and agents preparing for the raid. She wore a bulletproof vest beneath a casual jacket, standard procedure for civilian participants in FBI operations, though Alexandra was far from a typical civilian. 9:15 a.m. subjects are active in the residence, reported the surveillance technician, monitoring feeds from Alexandra's hidden cameras. Blackwell has arrived. 3 additional individuals just pulled up in a black Audi, likely the representatives from the shell company. Alexandra watched the monitors intently. Robert looked nervous, pacing the kitchen while straightening his tie repeatedly. Vanessa appeared calmer, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. Richard Blackwell, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, spread documents across the dining table with practiced efficiency. "Staff Sergeant Hudson," Agent Connor said quietly, "remember the agreement. You remain in the van until we secure the scene, no matter what you see or hear." Alexandra nodded without taking her eyes off the screen. Understood. The plan was precise. FBI agents posing as neighbors would establish a perimeter around the house. At exactly 9:45, when all parties were present and the fraudulent transaction was being executed, the raid would begin. Simultaneous operations were happening at Blackwell's office and 2 other properties connected to the scheme. On screen, the buyers, actually undercover FBI agents, were being welcomed into the house. Blackwell was all smiles, shaking hands and making introductions. Robert looked ill. "Audio is live in all rooms," the technician confirmed. Through the surveillance equipment, they could hear Blackwell's smooth sales pitch. "As I mentioned, the seller is currently deployed overseas with the military, but her husband has complete power of attorney to execute the sale. We have all documentation ready for your review." One of the undercover agents, playing the role of a cautious buyer, asked, "And the price we discussed, $800,000. That's significantly below market value for this neighborhood, correct?" "The sellers are motivated for a quick, clean transaction," Blackwell explained smoothly. "Military deployments create certain financial pressures. We're prepared to offer this exceptional value for a same-day closing. Alexandra's jaw tightened. The actual market value of her home was just over $1 million. They were selling it at a $200,000 loss, money that would disappear into offshore accounts. On screen, Robert handed over a document. "Here's the power of attorney my wife signed before deployment. It gives me full authority to handle all financial matters." The undercover agent examined it carefully. "This looks comprehensive. And your wife is aware of the sale terms?" Robert hesitated just a fraction too long. "Of course. She's eager to liquidate assets before our divorce is finalized." Blackwell smoothly interjected, "We have email confirmation from Mrs. Hudson approving the sale. Would you like to review that as well?" Agent Connor checked her watch. 9:42. 3 minutes to go. She spoke into her radio. "All units in position and ready." Affirmative responses came from the teams surrounding the house. On the monitor, the scene continued to unfold. Blackwell was now walking everyone through the closing documents, pointing out where signatures were needed. "And once these are signed," he explained, "the funds will be wire transferred to this account immediately. The deed will be recorded this afternoon." Alexandra leaned forward as she saw Robert discreetly check his watch. Something wasn't right. He seemed too anxious, even for someone committing fraud. "Agent Connor," she said urgently, "something's off. Robert keeps checking the time." Connor studied the monitor. "Could be nerves." "No, I know him. He's waiting for something specific." Alexandra pointed to another screen showing the exterior of the house. "And where's Vanessa?" "She was there a minute ago." The technician quickly cycled through camera feeds. "No visual on the female subject. She's not in any of the rooms we have covered." A cold realization washed over Alexandra. "Check the master bedroom. The cameras don't cover that area." The FBI had deliberately avoided placing surveillance in private areas of the home for legal reasons. The master bedroom had no coverage. Agent Torres immediately spoke into his radio. "Possible subject movement to unsurveilled areas. Be advised, female subject Schultz is not visible." Alexandra's instincts screamed danger. "They're up to something else. We need to move now." "We stick to the plan," Connor insisted. 9:45 exactly. On screen, one of the buyers was signing the first document. Robert checked his watch again and whispered something to Blackwell, who nodded subtly. 9:45, announced the technician. Agent Connor gave the command, "All units execute now. Go, go, go." On the monitors, Alexandra watched as FBI agents stormed into her house from multiple entry points. The shock on Robert's and Blackwell's faces was evident as agents in FBI jackets surrounded them, weapons drawn. "FBI! Everyone on the ground! Hands where we can see them!" Robert immediately raised his hands, sinking to his knees. Blackwell attempted to gather the documents but was quickly subdued. The buyers identified themselves as agents and assisted in securing the scene. "Where's Vanessa Schultz?" demanded one of the agents. Robert's face went pale. She went upstairs to get something." Alexandra felt a surge of alarm. "Agent Connor, I need to go in there now." "Negative, Staff Sergeant. Scene is not yet secure." On the radio, they heard an agent report. "Upper floor clear. No sign of female subject. Checking basement now." Alexandra unbuckled her seatbelt. "She's gone, probably with documents or evidence. I know this house better than anyone. There are hiding places your team won't find." Before Connor could protest further, Alexandra was out of the van, moving swiftly toward her home. She knew she was breaking protocol, but years of military training had taught her that sometimes field decisions overrode standard procedures. Approaching her house, Alexandra saw Robert and Blackwell being led out in handcuffs. Robert's eyes widened in shock when he saw her. "Alex, you're supposed to be overseas." She ignored him, pushing past into the house. Inside, FBI agents were securing evidence and searching rooms. "Staff Sergeant Hudson," an agent tried to intercept her. "You're not supposed to be in here during the operation." "The female suspect, Vanessa Schultz, she's missing," Alexandra stated firmly. There's a concealed storage space in the master bedroom closet. Follow me. Years ago, when they had renovated the house, Alexandra had installed a hidden compartment in their walk-in closet, a secure place for her military documents and service weapon when she was home. Robert had always found it excessive and rarely went near it. In the bedroom, Alexandra went straight to the closet and pressed a specific sequence on what appeared to be a regular electrical outlet. A panel in the back wall slid open, revealing a small storage space. It was empty, but there were fresh scratch marks around the lock mechanism. Someone had forced it open recently. She knew about this, Alexandra muttered. How did she know? An agent appeared at the doorway. Staff Sergeant, we found something you should see. In Robert's home office, agents had discovered a hidden laptop in a ventilated space beneath the floorboards. On the screen was a tracking program showing multiple GPS signals, one of which was moving rapidly away from their location. She's planted trackers, Alexandra realized, probably on valuables, documents, anything she thought might be evidence. Agent Connor, who had now entered the house, studied the screen. The moving signal. Where would that be coming from? Alexandra's blood ran cold. My military footlocker. I keep it in the guest room closet. It has my service records, medals, and personal items from deployments. An agent was immediately dispatched to check. He returned moments later, shaking his head. No footlocker in the guest room closet, ma'am. They've been planning this, Alexandra said, the pieces falling into place. The house sale was just one part of it. They knew there was a risk of being caught, so they prepared a contingency. Grab what valuable items and evidence they could, and disappear if things went wrong. Agent Connor was already mobilizing a response team. The signal is heading north on Highway 27. We'll intercept. Within minutes, local police had been alerted, and FBI vehicles were in pursuit of the moving GPS signal. Alexandra remained at the house, helping agents identify what else might be missing and where evidence might be hidden. In Robert's study, she noticed something that made her pause. A framed photograph of them on their wedding day had been moved. Behind it had been a small wall safe that Robert didn't know she knew about. He had installed it early in their marriage, claiming it was for important documents. There should be a safe behind this, she told the evidence technician. When they removed the picture, the safe was there, but open and empty. Alexandra sat heavily in Robert's desk chair, the magnitude of the betrayal still unfolding. How long had he been planning this? How many of their moments together had been genuine? Her phone rang. Agent Torres calling from the field. Staff Sergeant Hudson, we've intercepted a vehicle matching the one Vanessa Schultz was seen driving earlier. She attempted to evade, but crashed into a guardrail. She's in custody. And my footlocker? Recovered, along with several bags of what appear to be jewelry, documents, and electronic devices. We're bringing everything back now. Alexandra exhaled slowly. Thank you. After ending the call, she wandered through the house that no longer felt like home. FBI agents continued their methodical work, cataloging evidence and taking photographs. In the kitchen, Agent Connor was interviewing one of the undercover buyers. The conversation was explicit, the agent was saying. Blackwell clearly stated this was the 7th such operation they had conducted, specifically targeting military personnel deployed overseas. Alexandra found herself standing in the living room, looking at the life she and Robert had built together, now revealed as a construct of lies. On the mantel sat photos from happier times, their honeymoon in Hawaii, hiking in Colorado, Robert's proud smile when she had earned her promotion to staff sergeant. Had any of it been real? Her reflections were interrupted by Agent Connor. Staff Sergeant Hudson, we'd like you to come to the field office. Robert Hudson is asking to speak with you. Alexandra's expression hardened. Why would I want to talk to him? He's offering to provide details on all previous victims and offshore accounts in exchange for considerations in his case. Connor's voice softened slightly. And for what it's worth, he seems genuinely shocked that you were the one who uncovered the scheme. I think he underestimated you significantly. A bitter smile crossed Alexandra's face. Men like Robert always do. 3 hours later, at the FBI field office, Alexandra sat across from her husband in an interview room. Robert looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his confident demeanor replaced by desperation. "Alex, you have to believe me. I didn't know how deep this went at first," he pleaded. "Vanessa approached me at a time when I was vulnerable. Blackwell only revealed the full scheme later, when I was already implicated." Alexandra studied him with detached calm. "You forged my signature on refinancing documents while I was preparing for deployment. You emptied our joint accounts. You were planning to steal my military pension. At what point exactly did you not know what you were doing?" Robert's eyes dropped. "I made terrible mistakes, but I can help make it right. I know where all the money is. I know who all the victims are. I'll testify against Blackwell and the entire operation." Alexandra stood up. "Tell it to the FBI, Robert. I'm done listening to your lies." As she turned to leave, Robert called after her. "What happens to the house now? To our life?" Alexandra paused at the door. "There is no our anymore, Robert. You destroyed that with every decision you made." She looked back at him one last time. "And as for the house, it was never just yours to sell." She walked out of the interview room with her head high, leaving behind the man who had betrayed not just her trust, but the trust of other military families who had sacrificed so much for their country. Outside, Agent Connor was waiting. "You okay?" "I will be," Alexandra replied, and for the first time in weeks, she truly believed it. 3 months after the raid, Alexandra stood in an empty courtroom, watching as the judge delivered the final divorce decree. Robert wasn't present. He remained in federal custody awaiting trial. The proceedings were a mere formality at this point, the legal severing of a bond that had been broken long before. In light of the circumstances and pending federal charges against the respondent, this court grants all petitioners' requests regarding division of assets. The judge announced, his voice echoing in the nearly vacant room. The house and all contents revert solely to Staff Sergeant Alexandra Hudson, along with full retention of her military benefits and pension. The divorce is hereby finalized. Alexandra thanked her military-appointed attorney, signed the final documents, and walked out into the bright autumn sunshine. A chapter of her life was officially closed. The wound remained, but it was healing cleaner than she had expected. Her phone buzzed with a text from Special Agent Lisa Connor. "Blackwell took a plea deal this morning. 15 years federal time, full cooperation, returning assets to all victims. Thought you'd want to know." Alexandra smiled slightly as she texted back a simple, "Thank you." In the months since the operation, she had developed an unexpected friendship with the FBI agent. They were different in many ways, but shared a core of steel that recognized itself in the other. Driving away from the courthouse, Alexandra passed familiar landmarks that now held different meanings. The coffee shop where she and Robert had spent Sunday mornings. The park where they had talked about having children someday. The home improvement store where they had picked out paint colors for the house that was now solely hers, but which she had no desire to keep. Her new apartment was small but sufficient, a temporary space while she determined her next steps. After 15 years of military service, Alexandra had been offered an honorable discharge with full benefits if she wanted it. The Army recognized the trauma she had endured and the unique circumstances of her case. She had until the end of the month to decide whether to accept or continue her service. At her apartment, Alexandra changed from her formal court attire into jeans and a comfortable sweater. On her kitchen table lay brochures from real estate agents, paperwork for listing her house, and a letter from the FBI Victim Compensation Program. The investigation had recovered approximately 60% of the stolen funds from various offshore accounts. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to start over. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Captain Vicente stood in the hallway, now in civilian clothes rather than his uniform. "Permission to enter, Staff Sergeant?" he asked with a small smile. "Permission granted, Captain," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Though, technically, we're both off duty." "Vincent, then," he corrected, handing her a small gift bag. "I heard today was the final court date. Thought you might need a friend." Inside the bag was a bottle of good scotch and 2 glasses. Alexandra appreciated the gesture from the man, who had been not just her commanding officer, but a steady presence throughout the investigation and its aftermath. They sat on her small balcony, watching the sunset as they sipped the amber liquid in comfortable silence. Finally, Vincent spoke. "Have you made your decision about the discharge offer?" Alexandra swirled the scotch in her glass. "Not yet. Part of me feels like accepting it would mean Robert and his scheme won, that they took my marriage and my career." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "And the other part?" "The other part wonders if this is the universe giving me a chance to explore roads not taken." She looked out at the skyline. "I joined the military at 28, after 4 years as an accountant. I've served 15 years. Maybe it's time for something new." "You'd be missed," Vincent said simply. "But you've more than fulfilled your duty, Alexandra. No one would question your choice either way." After Vincent left, Alexandra sat alone with her thoughts as darkness fell. Her phone rang, the special ringtone she had assigned to Jake, her friend from cyber intelligence, who had helped uncover the fraud. "How'd it go today?" he asked without preamble. "Officially divorced and sole owner of a house I'm planning to sell," she replied. "Blackwell took a plea deal." "And how are you, really?" Alexandra considered the question carefully. "I'm recalculating, finding new coordinates." "That's very military of you," Jake laughed. "Listen, I'm in town for that cybersecurity conference I mentioned. Any chance you're free for dinner tomorrow?" "Just as friends," he added quickly. "I'd like that," Alexandra found herself saying, surprising herself a little with how much she meant it. The next morning, Alexandra drove to her former home for what she planned to be one of her final visits. The real estate agent was meeting her in an hour to discuss listing the property. The FBI had long since cleared the scene, removing all surveillance equipment and evidence. The house had been professionally cleaned, erasing the physical traces of the raid and investigation. Alexandra walked through each room methodically, separating her possessions into categories: keep, donate, sell. In the master bedroom, she hesitated at the closet door. Behind it hung the few clothes Robert had left behind when he was arrested. She hadn't been able to face dealing with them until now. Steeling herself, she opened the door and began removing his items, placing them in donation bags. At the back of the closet, behind Robert's winter coats, Alexandra noticed something odd, a small tear in the wallpaper. Curious, she peeled it back slightly to reveal a tiny hidden compartment she had never known existed. Inside was a small flash drive. Alexandra stared at it, her heart pounding. Another secret. Another hidden piece of Robert's double life. She slipped it into her pocket, deciding to give it to the FBI rather than view its contents herself. Some doors were better left closed. As she continued packing, the doorbell rang. Expecting the real estate agent, Alexandra was surprised to find Melissa Williams standing on her porch, the wife of a sergeant who had served with Alexandra years earlier. "Melissa, this is unexpected." The woman's eyes were red from crying, her hands clutching a newspaper. "Is it true? The story in the paper about the fraud ring targeting military families?" Alexandra gently ushered her inside. "Yes, it's true." "How did you connect it to me?" "Your name isn't in the article, but it mentioned a staff sergeant who uncovered the scheme while deployed." Melissa's voice broke. "When Tom was in Afghanistan 3 years ago, I went through a divorce. Our house was sold quickly. I lost everything. The description matches exactly what happened to me." Alexandra felt a wave of compassion for the woman. "Have you spoken to the FBI? They're working to identify all the victims." Melissa nodded. "Yesterday. They confirmed we were one of the cases. They're investigating whether my ex-husband was manipulated like yours or was a willing participant." She looked around the house. I needed to thank you. The agent said if you hadn't uncovered the scheme, they might never have connected all the cases." After Melissa left, Alexandra sat on her front steps, processing the encounter. What had begun as a personal betrayal had rippled outward, affecting lives she hadn't even known were connected to hers. By fighting for herself, she had inadvertently fought for others as well. The real estate agent arrived, clipboard in hand, and smile firmly in place. "Staff Sergeant Hudson, shall we discuss your options for listing?" 2 hours later, Alexandra had signed the paperwork to put the house on the market. As she walked the agent to her car, a familiar black FBI vehicle pulled into the driveway. Agent Connor stepped out, holding a file folder. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said, nodding to the departing real estate agent. "Perfect timing, actually. Just finished listing the house." Inside, Connor spread photographs across the kitchen counter. Pictures of evidence recovered from Vanessa's vehicle and various storage units rented under false names. "We've managed to trace most of the money," Connor explained. "Blackwell was meticulous about record-keeping, which has become his undoing. Each victim will likely recover 70 to 80% of their losses once all accounts are seized." Alexandra examined the financial flowcharts. And Robert, cooperating fully, claims he was manipulated, but the evidence suggests he was a willing participant by the time your case began. "He'll serve time, but less than Blackwell due to his cooperation." Connor hesitated before continuing. "There's something else you should know. In exchange for reduced charges, Vanessa Schultz has been revealing details about how they selected targets. They specifically looked for deployed service members with significant assets and spouses who exhibited certain vulnerabilities." "What kind of vulnerabilities?" Alexandra asked, though part of her didn't want to know. In Robert's case, they identified a pattern of online behavior suggesting discontent. He had been frequenting dating sites for nearly a year before Vanessa approached him at that charity event he attended while you were at training. The revelation stung, but less sharply than it might have months earlier. The betrayal had begun long before Alexandra had noticed any signs. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. "It helps, actually, to know it wasn't something that happened overnight." Connor nodded, understanding in her eyes. "For what it's worth, every agent who worked this case has been impressed by your resilience. The Bureau has an opening in our Financial Crimes Division if you're ever interested. Your accounting background combined with your military experience would be valuable." Alexandra blinked in surprise. "Are you offering me a job?" "Planting a seed," Connor smiled. "Think about it." After the agent left, Alexandra walked through her soon-to-be former home one last time. In the backyard, she paused at her old workshop, the space that had once been her sanctuary for woodworking projects during leaves between deployments. Inside, covered in dust, sat her tools and several half-finished pieces. Alexandra ran her fingers along the grain of an oak bookshelf she had started before her last deployment. The wood was still good. The project could still be completed. On impulse, she pulled out her phone and called Jake. "That dinner invitation for tonight. Can we make it lunch instead? And afterward, would you help me load some woodworking equipment into my truck? I've made a decision about my future." 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Alexandra stood on the porch of a small cabin near a lake, 2 hours from the city. Birds called from the surrounding trees as she sipped her coffee, surveying the workshop she had built adjacent to the cabin. Inside were her carefully restored tools and several commissioned pieces in various stages of completion. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent, who had retired from the Army and now taught military strategy at a nearby university. "Still on for fishing this weekend?" She smiled as she texted back an affirmative. Their friendship had deepened in the months since her discharge from the military, evolving naturally without pressure or expectations. Alexandra's new life had taken shape with the same methodical precision she had applied in her military career. Using the money from the sale of her former home and the recovered funds from the fraud investigation, she had purchased this small property with its cabin and acreage. The wooden sign at the end of the driveway read, "Hudson Woodworking and Restoration." Though The military skills that had once guided her through combat zones now served her in different ways. Discipline in craftsmanship, attention to detail in design, and strategic thinking in building her small business. The nightmares about betrayal had faded, replaced by dreams of new creations taking shape beneath her hands. Inside the cabin, Alexandra's laptop dinged with an email notification. It was from Melissa Williams, now the organizer of a support group for military families affected by similar fraud schemes. The group had grown to include 23 families across the country, all connected by shared experience and the determination to rebuild. "Our advocacy bill goes before the Senate committee next month," Melissa wrote. "Would you be willing to testify about your experience? Your story could help create new protections for deployed service members." Alexandra typed her reply immediately. "I'll be there." Later that afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the workshop windows, Alexandra carefully sanded the edges of a cherry wood dining table commissioned by a young couple starting their life together. From a shelf above her workbench, a framed commendation from the FBI sat alongside her military service medals. Different chapters of a life marked by both pain and purpose. The sound of tires on gravel announced a visitor. Jake's familiar truck pulled up, loaded with premium lumber from a supplier 3 counties over. They had been seeing each other casually for several months now, taking things slowly, both understanding the value of building something strong and genuine from the foundation up. Alexandra stepped out of the workshop, wiping sawdust from her hands. For the first time in years, she felt truly at home. Not in a house built on falsehoods, but in a life constructed with her own hands, measured carefully, cut precisely, and joined with patience and skill. As Jake helped her unload the lumber, he nodded toward the nearly completed table in her workshop. "That's beautiful work. The couple's going to love it." "I think so," Alexandra agreed. "It's built to last." And standing there in the golden afternoon light, surrounded by the life she had chosen and created for herself, Alexandra Hudson knew with absolute certainty that she was too. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.